Good evening, everyone. Matt Derrick, Chiefs Digest here. I don't have a magic wall behind me. I just have a mess. I have a loaf of bread behind me. I'm eating dinner at my desk. So, left that there. That's pretty classy of me. So, yeah. Hey, we'll work it all. That's what we're here for. Welcome to the Chiefs Digest Live Q&A. Hopefully some of you will be able to join us. I know it's obviously a big night in America. So understand if some of you are keeping tabs on Steve Kornacki and John King and tracking votes out of Cobb County. So understand it might be a little bit different night. But hey, as Luttrell said, it's a big night. So it's still the big show tonight. So probably obviously one of the things I know is going to come up tonight is going to be the draft deadline. And it was busy. I mean, certainly the Chiefs were busy over the last couple of weeks at the trade deadline. I can tell you Brett Veach and his staff were working through today, continuing to try and make some deals. They had one white whale deal still out there that they wanted to try and get done as far as acquiring a cornerback. And obviously that did not happen, but it wasn't for a lack of trying. And really, I mean, you look outside of the Marshawn Lattimore deal, not really a lot of cornerback movement in the last week. It was I think I certainly thought that there might be a few other cornerbacks on the move. I thought that with the Dolphins losing on Sunday, I thought they might make some moves. They did not. Obviously, Cleveland's not going anywhere. Carolina's not going anywhere, but both those teams have some fundamental pieces that I also understand why that they didn't want to move on and they didn't want to part with some of their young talent. And that's, were certainly some of the players that the Chiefs were interested in. I will say, I know that from talking to people in the Chiefs organization that they were pretty surprised at the haul that the Saints got for Lattimore going to Washington. And I personally think it was an overpay. I mean, we'll see if it works out for Washington. I mean, if they're able to take this hot start and turn it into a Super Bowl, then we'll know that, hey, it was a good move and it worked out for them. It's you have some control of Lattimore going forward. So at least in that standpoint, you got an opportunity to have him as a building block for the future. But I still think even with the fifth round coming back to them, a third and a fourth going for Lattimore, I mean, I think was a high price. The Chiefs were interested. I'm reliably told that the Chiefs were offering their third round pick. That was their offer and weren't really interested in going any higher than that. And I was kind of surprised that even the Chiefs wanted to go that high because my understanding was that the Chiefs really wanted to protect their day one and their day two picks. Didn't want to let go of any of those four selections that they have if they didn't have to. Certainly I think that the injury to Jalen Watson and even the concussion with Najee Johnson, I think probably changed their conversation and thoughts a little bit as far as what they might be willing to give up. But, it's, I think that, the Chiefs went into this with the same philosophy that they did with all the moves that they made. It was true with Uche. It was true with Hopkins. They wanted to acquire players that, one were good scheme fits, one were cost fits, one were compensation fits as far as what, draft picks you'd have to give up to bring them in. That they were good fits as far as character in the locker room, that they weren't going to disrupt things. And, from that standpoint, I think that they absolutely held firm to that and, and stuck with their plan. They didn't go overboard. They didn't, bail on their plan at the last minute or anything of that nature. They stuck with what they wanted to do. And, the Chiefs have been called, I think they can reliably say that they probably contacted just about every team in the league, about trying to find cornerback help. And it just wasn't there. I mean, that's the way it works out sometimes. You got to have two sides to make a deal. And Chiefs could not find that. They certainly I think would have entertained some offers about some other positions, but at the wide receiver spot, they truly believe that they're in good shape there. That, this is, once again, I mean, they're building for the postseason. That's what they're trying to do. They're not trying to win the regular season. I mean, they may win, may get the number one seed in the AFC without trying to win the regular season. A little bit like trying, winning exercising. But they couldn't. I mean, they could run the table. I don't think that's a conversation that the Chiefs want to have right now. But and they got too many tough games to go, including a big one coming up in Buffalo. Even this Denver game could be a little bit more scary than people realize with that Buffalo defense. And I'm gonna give Brian the shout out for saying hit the like button. But at the same time, I will say, even though the Chiefs did not make a move on the trade deadline day, I still have to say, I mean, based on the returns that we've seen so far, I give Brett Veach pretty high grade, maybe the highest grade. I don't know if there's another team that I can really say that I think, came out of this better and improved their team more than the Chiefs did. Certainly with the acquisition specifically of DeAndre Hopkins and Joshua Uche, but you bring in the addition of Kareem Hunt as well. I mean, those are three players that I think absolutely are three better additions. I can't name another team that has three better additions over the last, month and a half than the Chiefs have made. And if you just limit it even to the trades, I'll take Hopkins and Uche over any combination that I've seen any of the other teams put together. I mean, the Chiefs had specific needs. They went and got them. And, and Dez, exactly the point that I'm making here, which is even if you bring in Baltimore and Buffalo, Baltimore has a little bit of quantity. I'm just not sure that Baltimore got quality. I think they kind of pressed a little bit, and we'll see if it works out for them. It may. I mean, maybe Deontay Johnson is going to work out for them, and that's going to be an okay move. That wasn't the problem. The problem that Baltimore has is their defense isn't very good. And, they need pass rush help badly. I mean, this is not the same Baltimore defense that they've been in the past. They absolutely need defensive help, and they did not get it. So, the Chiefs did not need defensive help. Where did they need help? I mean, they did need pass rushing help. They need cornerback help. They got one of the two. They didn't get the one that, the cornerback help, but they improved, I think, their pass rush. And if you want to go with the philosophy that, hey, improving your pass rush is going to make it easier on your defensive backs, I'll let you make that argument. So there's some moves that they can make. There's certainly, advantages they had there. But when you talk about the glaring need that the Chiefs had on offense with the injuries at the wide receiver position and getting DeAndre Hopkins, these two games have shown that DeAndre Hopkins was the absolute, I think, only piece that made sense. I mean, the dude is a future Hall of Famer, and he has proved why these last two games, even in limited work against the Raiders, and even still somewhat limited work, as far as just a limited pared down version of the offense that he's picked up so far. I mean, what a absolutely tremendous impact, not even in his own numbers, but the fact that his presence and what it had on Travis Kelsey and his ability to make plays. So, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, I feel like if you're a Chiefs fan, you have to be extremely happy with what Brett Veach and his staff was able to get done during this trade deadline. There's, like I said, I mean, you would have loved to have gotten a cornerback. The Chiefs just simply did not believe that there was any cornerback out there that was, one, worth the price, and two, would fit what they wanted. Tre'Davious White went for a very, very small cost. I do not believe that the Chiefs were interested in Tre'Davious White. He's, one, coming back from an injury, and certainly doesn't show any evidence of being 100% from that. There are some injury concerns there longer term too, so that was an issue. Cost of effective, absolutely. Cost of compensation, absolutely. Would he have checked the box for chemistry? I don't know. I can't speak to that for sure. I don't know what the Chiefs' homework was on that, but I think it was more, that it did not check the box as far as health goes and as far as just being back 100% from that injury. So, hey, like I said, Brett Veach and his team had been scouring the league for corner help the last few weeks. I think that the big challenge finally at the end of the day came to the fact that none of the players that they were interested in became available. And, had a J.C. Horn hit the market, had a Kendall Fuller hit the market, had a Greg Newsome in Cleveland hit the market. Chiefs might have been interested. They might have been able to get something done. But, the price for Lattimore was not anywhere close to what they were interested in. So that was not going to happen. I think Washington overpaid for that. Like I said, your mileage may vary. We'll see if that ends up being the right move for them. Maybe it will work out, but certainly wasn't in the Chiefs ballpark. So, hey, you can still make some moves. Obviously, you can watch the waiver wire. There's going to be some free agents that pop up. You're getting back. And for the Chiefs, that's the thing, is that they're getting back players that they feel like are just as good or better than some acquisitions that they can make. Charles Omenihu, even with the health coming back, and you're going to have some concerns about Omenihu, what percentage of himself is he going to be? They feel like in a limited role as part of the rotation behind Dana and Karlaftis, when Dana comes back and is back to full health, they feel like they've got a really good rotation now there at defensive end. So that's one great advantage that they've got. They feel like that they're going to improve their wide receiver room, because their expectation is that by the playoffs that their rotation is going to also include obviously a healthy Juju Smith-Schuster when he comes back, and if Juju can stay healthy, that's always a challenge. But then getting Hollywood back, I mean, Hollywood Brown in theory would be better than any acquisition that you could have made through a trade. And so that's what the Chiefs are banking on. And they are absolutely managing, and Brett Veach's approach with this has been to manage this roster. Andy Reid's, plan with this to manage this team is to get them at full strength and playing their best football come January. They're not worried about playing their best football in November. That's not the plan. So they're trying to set it up so that they're full strength, that they've got the team that they want on the field, that they're playing their best ball in January in the playoffs. So we'll see if the plan works. That's what their plan is. Like I said, I'd be interested in the comments, what your grades are, what you think about the job that Brett Veach and his staff has done. And then, and if you want to include Kareem Hunt in your grade, I'll let you. Just considering what the Chiefs have done in the last couple of weeks with the acquisition of Hopkins and with Uche, interested in what your thoughts. Like I said, feel free to throw them into the comments. All right, now that I've pontificated enough, and hopefully Nick will be able to join us here pretty shortly, we'll just dive into the questions. And Dave, you are first up. What's up with CEH? Are they running Hunt too much? CEH is a good question. I thought there was a chance that he might actually be active this week, particularly with the weather. I thought the Chiefs might be interested in doing kind of what they did, which is run the football a lot, especially in the second half, and that they might have some interest in, trying to get a few touches for Clyde. But so far they have not made him active. I can't tell you exactly why at this point that they have chosen not to go that direction with Clyde. He's on the 53, so obviously they feel like he is healthy enough at this point. They're obviously just banking on the depth because they know, let's face it, you're going to lose running backs. Players are going to go down. Pacheco went down. There's a chance that you can lose somebody else. You don't want to lose Kareem, obviously, but there's always a chance. So that's one of the things that the Chiefs absolutely appreciate with having Clyde around, is that he does give them some depth. So even if he's not playing, that's an advantage. There doesn't appear to be any health or physical reason, anything of that nature about why Clyde's not playing. I'm going to poke around this week and see if there's any insight that I can get for you all about, what his situation is and kind of what the vision and future is for Clyde. Obviously, I think Lisa Salters had a report last night before the Monday Night Football broadcast that Pacheco was doing some running, testing, checking with the trainers and the coaches on Thursday. So he is, it looks like, getting close to maybe being designated to return. We'll see what happens there. But at some point, yes, in the next few weeks, maybe the next month, you're going to get Isaiah Pacheco back. Because that gets in your second part of the question, Dave, which is, are they running Kareem Hunt too much? I think they are. Even for a guy that, I get it, doesn't have a lot of miles because of being on the couch for the first half of the season. But then again, no training camp, no off-season training. I mean, this is a lot of work that the Chiefs have been giving him. And let's face it, the numbers have been going down. I mean, he had, I think, a little bit of a rebound last night. Maybe the extra day from, playing on a Sunday to a Monday, maybe that helped a bit. Chiefs also kind of managed him a little bit during practice last week. Maybe that helped a bit. But, his numbers as far as yards per carry, his missed tackles, a lot of his metrics have been steadily going down the last few weeks. And obviously, yards per carry has not been real glossy. It was 3.9 last night. That's okay. It's not great. You'd like it to be above 4, but that's, to me, with Kareem, I think you want to manage his workload a little bit better than they have. So yeah, that to me, I think you want to try and cut that back a bit. Why they're not doing that with, and we've actually, I think, say P. Ryan got a decent amount of work last night. They got Carson Steele in there for a few touches as well. I mean, they've been running a lot of plays. I mean, that's been part of it. So, you get some of these long drives and, the Chiefs are having 60 odd, 70 snaps a week, a lot of snaps, a lot of work, but how much they're giving of Kareem, I do think it's a bit much. So having Pacheco back would be great to be able to take that workload off, because I don't think you just want to run Kareem into the ground before the postseason. I think it's too valuable as a piece to have somewhat fresh when you get to the playoffs. And like I said, maybe Kareem believes that he can maintain this workload, and because he didn't have any touches in the first half of the season and didn't have a training camp, that maybe he can keep this going. I think that's a risky gamble. Kareem's special, I'll give him that, but 27 carries is a lot in this day and age in the NFL. It's tough. So I do think they're running him too much, Dave. Hasn't hurt him yet. He was effective last night when they needed him. He has obviously not exactly been stopped. I mean, his success rate, his win rate is fantastic. So as long as they're getting production and efficiency out of Hunt, I think they're going to continue running him. I would just like to see them keeping him fresher so that his all-around metrics are a little bit better. And I will say this, they monitor these players extensively. So, one of the things that they do is, they do measure them even in practice about whether or not, players are showing a decrease in speed or anything of that nature. So I think if they saw we're seeing a sufficient decline in those measurements and in those readings, I think they would, and that's, I'm certain, one of the reasons why they have been kind of giving him some time off during the practice week, to rest up and recuperate a bit. I do think if they're seeing some of those things in the metrics, they would back him off. But at this point, they feel pretty good. And obviously he had some really nice runs on Monday night, so I can't criticize the results, but I do just worry about the production and just as far as the risk with the number of touches that he's getting. This is an interesting question, Brian. Can George Karlaftis possibly get any sexier? I'm probably the wrong person to ask there. I think just from a football standpoint, that was a heck of a game Karlaftis had last night. Could have had a couple of sacks. We had one taken away by the penalty. Deflected pass. For George taking some criticism early in the season for maybe not having as much production as he did during the first half last year, I think he's starting to show some flashes of getting it all back. And I'll tell you what, having Uche on the field last night, I think absolutely helped Karlaftis. He was very productive on third downs early. Hope the hip injury is nothing serious for him, and I don't think it's going to be. He did come back into the game after that. But I think that, right now, that third down package that the Chiefs were using most of the night last night, especially early, with Karlaftis and Uche on the outside and Jones and Wharton on the inside, really like that. I would expect that once Mike Dan is back, you're going to have him and Wharton's place on the inside. That's going to be 4 really good rushers and distinctive rushers with different flavors and different styles that I think that Steve Spagnuolo could have a lot of fun with. So let's see what happens. But I think that I was really impressed with the way that third down, the pass rush looked last night. That's, I think, a step in the right direction for this team. Cody, did Andy have his even have his presser today? No. Chiefs decided that with the late night game last night and then a practice week starting up on Wednesday, they would not do the normal Zoom that they would have on the Tuesday at noon. So we did not hear from Andy. Day off for the players as well. So that's why we really haven't heard anything from Patrick Mahomes and the state of his ankle. Certainly expect to hear that on Wednesday. That'll be I'm sure the story of the day is just how Patrick is feeling. We should get him in his press conference, and unless for some reason because of the injury that they're expecting, if the Chiefs expect on Wednesday that Carson Wentz is starting on Sunday, we will hear from Carson Wentz on Wednesday. I'm not expecting that at this point, but we'll see what Patrick has to say on Wednesday and what his workload in practice is this week. Cody, second question. Do you know what corners the Chiefs called about? I know they called about Marshon Lattimore. I believe they checked in. I know they checked in on some others. I can't specifically say for sure whom. I know that it was a lot because the Chiefs were basically checking around anywhere and anybody in the league about who they had available at the corner spot. Brett Veach and his guys are not shy about calling and texting anybody in the league, any GM, anybody that they have a relationship with, and saying, hey, who's available? What's your situation? What's going on? So I think it was a long and exhaustive list. I mean, there's a few that are out there. Like I said, Lattimore was out there. There's a couple of others I'm certain that the Chiefs asked on, even if they're not public yet. But it was quite a bit. I mean, then they certainly checked on a lot of guys, obviously, that just weren't available. And that's the thing, is that I'm surprised that a couple of teams didn't make a move. I thought that the Dolphins absolutely should have made some moves as far as, putting some guys on the market. I thought Cleveland should have as well. I understand why they didn't, like a Greg Newsome, because he's young. He's got another year left. It's affordable. You've got some control over him with a franchise tag even. So, you can still build around him. I get Carolina maybe not wanting to let go of their young core players, that they want to try and keep them for a rebuild. I get all of that. But yeah, I was surprised, like I said, that there just weren't more corners that hit the market, but the ones who did, I mean, outside of Lattimore, which once again, price wasn't right, I don't think there was anybody else that really hit the market in at least the last few days that the Chiefs were interested in. There may have been some corners. I have to go back and look at the list and remember who'd been traded over the last couple of weeks. There may have been some others that the Chiefs were at least interested in, but again, cost was an issue. But I think, Cody, to me, I think that the real challenge was just that the ones that the Chiefs were most interested in never hit the market. Jesus, how cool was the Jaden Hicks hit on the Tampa wide receiver? If we're thinking about the same one, Jesus, I remember the one on Kate Otten, the tight end. And luckily, Otten was okay. I mean, it looked pretty nasty at first, but I mean, that was a hit stick from Jaden Hicks. And there could have been, we could be thinking about two different ones, because Jaden Hicks he hits guys. He's absolutely not afraid of contact. And it's nice to see him being able to get more work, to get in there. The Chiefs are more comfortable with putting him out there. Obviously, he's been a core special teams player, and Dave Toub trusts him implicitly already. That's an incredible step for, to already have a rookie that you trust that much as a special teams coach. But now that we're getting in the second half of the season, I mean, this is when the Chiefs want their young players to really start coming and stepping into their own a little bit, because they can give a little bit of a breather and a refresher, and take some of the load off the guys who have been doing the work most of the season. And now that these guys have a little bit more seasoning themselves, they're going to be more comfortable. I mean, Chris Roland Wallace played 22 snaps last night. Gosh, it still amazes me. Hicks only played 9, and I feel like that it just like every time he was on the field, he was around the football. And obviously, he had a couple of hits that were really big hits. Uche played 9 snaps. I think those were all I think those were all exclusively third downs early. I was impressed with all 9 of those snaps. I mean, I think he made a definite impression. So there's a lot with these young guys that, Looking to see who else kind of, Felix has been playing a lot too. And, obviously a second-year player. Leo only playing 18 snaps kind of surprised me, but that's just a little bit of situation. I mean, the Chiefs definitely, in some of their sub packages were definitely playing more defensive backs. That's why Chris Roland Wallace played a lot. Shamari Connor played a lot. And Drew Tranquil was usually the second linebacker out there. So I understand the matchups for this game was probably not ideal for Leo. When Leo was out there, he was a little bit of a spy. Used him a lot late as far as, trying to make sure that Baker Mayfield didn't have a lot of places to run. Nice that you can use Leo in those situations. And Jesus, your second question, did you hear about any trades the Chiefs could make to get picks? That really wasn't too much of there because, to get picks, you have to give up players. And the Chiefs weren't really, in a position or, a spot where they're going to be giving up players. There's a lot of reasons why you wouldn't. I mean, if you're trading guys off of a Super Bowl team, I mean, that can affect your chemistry, and you're not trying to stockpile draft picks. I mean, and the Chiefs feel like over the next couple of years, they're going to be fine draft pick wise. They've got 4 picks in the day 1 and day 2 next year. They aren't real concerned about, honestly, I don't think day 3 picks next year's draft, because as Nick has mentioned before, there's a lot of talk around the league that day 3 of the 2025 draft just may not be very strong. That it's going to be a top heavy draft, that, the 4th and 7th round picks may be fairly indistinguishable at a lot of places. May just be tough. It's, there's still a little bit of a COVID adjustment going on. There's an NIL adjustment going on. And this might be the draft that really gets impacted by that. Maybe there's a lot of 4th, 5th, 6th round guys that are staying in college because they're going to be better paid for another extra year of college than they would be, as maybe a 5th round NFL draft pick. You stick around for that 1 year of college, 1 more year of college. And then, if you can improve your draft stock, it's helping you out. So there's my understanding, like I said, Nick's been talking about, is that the day 3 of the 25 draft isn't going to be all that. So that's why the Chiefs, they're happy to have those 4 day 1 and day 2 picks that they've got. Obviously, you could parlay those into more picks if you want to, but they really weren't in that spot trying to get picks right now. It just wasn't a fit. I mean, they're certainly not going to be trading anybody they want off this team for more ammunition down the road. And, and they also, I mean, let's be honest, the Chiefs have the expectation that they will probably lose free agents in March. I mean, there's going to be some attrition with this team. It's going to happen. I mean, especially if, as Brandon's got coming up in a question, note there that, Trey Smith is crushing people right now. You need to get Trey Smith signed. So, if you do get Trey Smith signed, there's a lot of players on this team that are going to be free agents. I mean, Justin Reed, if the Chiefs don't re-sign Joshua Uche, he's going to be a free agent, and that would be a comp pick situation that you could be getting back. So the Chiefs, right now could be in line for a lot of compensation picks in the 2026 draft. And as a result, they've not been shy about trading 2026 picks. They've used a couple of those now as far as, making some deals and everything. Peyton Hendershot was a 7th round 2026 pick. Trying to remember if I guess Hopkins was a 25, but they've not been shy about using some 26 picks because they feel like they're going to get a lot of comp picks in those situations. And Jesus, Chiefs can still pick up release players. So, and right now, I mean, after the trade deadline, everybody in the league has to go through waivers. So even veterans will now be going through waivers. Now the Chiefs are 32nd on the waiver wire. So there's not going to be a lot of players that do fall to them on waivers. Still can happen, but it's a little bit more difficult. But I mean, they can sign players off of other teams' practice squads. Players do clear waivers; they can sign them, so they can bring up from their own practice squad. So there's still places that the Chiefs can pick up talent. So it's not like you have to stand pat. And if you get injuries, there's obviously options that you got down the road. Brian, are the guys that were here in August going to contribute this year, or are we just doing the three-peat on sheer mercenaries? I mean, you're done. Although, I mean, you look at it, Chiefs got a lot of turnover, and it's not just since August, even from last year. I mean, Chiefs are a great example that, you gotta, you can't stand pat. You gotta have some turnover. And the Chiefs, honestly, I mean, on defensive side didn't have a lot of turnover. They had a little bit more on the offensive side, but you're always going to be that way. So, and usually the biggest turnover that you've got in a team in season is usually because of injuries, and that's where the Chiefs have had a real challenge. Obviously, is having a few hits. So, I get it. It's sometimes it can feel like you're missing out on some fan favorites that get lost along the way and everything. But and let's face it too. I mean, Brett Veach and this team, they want a three-peat, so they're going to do anything they can to try and get that. And if it means that, hey, you bring somebody in because they're better, or you think they can do better than somebody you got, get one extra ounce of victory out of somebody, you're going to do that. I'm finally coming down and grabbing some of the grades that you all were talking about as far as how you would grade Brett Veach and the trade deadline. Perry, B+. I believe we needed a cornerback with Nazee's health concerns. You can't keep running inexperienced guys out there and expect to keep the elite defense. And that's really where, that Brett Veach ran into some troubles during this trade deadline, is because, the Chiefs, they do have some depth. I mean, they've got a lot of young guys on this secondary. They've got, Eric Scott's, I know, down on the practice squad. They brought up Keith Taylor from the practice squad. There might be another player that they bring in from the practice squad. They were fine with maybe their fourth, and Chamari corner can play a corner. I mean, he basically has been playing a corner for you. They felt they're fine with 4, 5, and 6. I mean, they got plenty of competition there, plenty of depth. That's not the problem. Problem is that they wanted somebody who could come in and, to your point, with Nazee's health concerns and with Jalen Watson out right now, that could be a number 2 or a number 3. And, I don't think like Tre'Davious White right now, maybe a 3, but I think the Chiefs would have viewed him as more like a 4 or 5 right now, and or maybe a player who just doesn't fit their scheme enough. And obviously, like I said, that there's health concerns there. That's the difficult thing, is that it did not appear that there was a lot of talent. I mean, Lattimore is the one the Chiefs were interested, just not at that price. So, hey, B+ is a legitimate grade. I'm not going to pick anybody apart for giving a B+ for that exact reason, Perry. Luttrell, A+, Hopkins is him. I can't argue with that one either. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins, I mean, if Chiefs three-peat and DeAndre Hopkins has some games like he's playing right now, then, I mean, that's going to go down as one of the better, if not one of the best trade deadline deals ever. So, give that a lot of credit. It's a great deal. Great deal for the Chiefs with the value there with Hopkins. I got no complaints there. Get back to the questions and see if I lost my place. I do that whenever I scroll through. That's why I get behind, because I get too many things in my mind and I forget where we left off. So I'm slowly catching back up here. I know Brian was the last question. Des, yeah, this kind of ties in with, I think, one of the questions that Jesus had. Any players you were surprised weren't traded? I mean, obviously, I assume you're not talking about from the Chiefs, because I don't think the Chiefs were interested in trading anybody. I think they were obviously only really interested in acquiring talent. But I kind of mentioned it. Des, I'm going to bring this up when Nick comes in and see if he has any different ideas, because I thought that Cleveland probably should have been sellers. Carolina should have been sellers. The Dolphins absolutely should have been sellers. And the fact that they kind of stayed put, and Kendall Fuller, I think, absolutely should have gone onto the market. He would have been great, I think, for either Kansas City or Washington. There was talk with possibility of both those teams. There's Probably a few others that I could be thinking of that they're just going through my mind and out again right now. But yeah, I mean, I'm surprised, honestly. I mean, as much activity as there was, I was kind of surprised that there wasn't more. I mean, it's starting to be, the NFL trade deadline starting to get a little bit more entertaining. So but I definitely, I thought, I mean, the Chiefs, like I said, they definitely want to try and get a corner done. The fact that they weren't able to get that done had more to do with just not the supply out there. So I thought that there might be a bit more supply. The number of teams that decided not to make a move that I think are out of it definitely surprised me. And some teams that maybe made belated moves into breaking things down. The Saints, for example. I mean, Saints probably could have made that decision a couple of weeks ago, and it's probably a little bit of an organizational failure that they didn't. They waited as long as they did, and had they opened up for business earlier, maybe they would have made some more moves. So, I don't know if there's really, I mean, a big super name that I like, Des, that I expected to hit the market. But there's a couple of corners for sure that I thought there was a possibility might be available, but just never did. Chiefs Kingdom, I'm going to try and come back to your question too, because it's one for Nick. So I'm going to try and hold that one back until Nick gets here. Hoping still Nick can be in. I know he was feeling a little bit under the weather, so we'll hope all is well with him. But Brian, your other question, was this last draft a complete waste at this point? Isn't that 2 in a row? Oh no, I mean, I don't see that at all, Brian. I mean, this year's draft, I mean, hey, I get it if you're a little disappointed in Xavier Worthy. He didn't have a very good game last night, so I get that. If you want to be a little down on Worthy, I don't think you should, because I still think he's going to be a really good player for you. I mean, don't give up on Kingsley Suamataia. He's going to be a good player. So I think Hunter Norzad, I think, is absolutely going to be a starter next season. CJ Hansen has got a nasty streak. He's a smart kid too. Really like him. Jaden Hicks is going to play a lot. I mean, Jaden Hicks is right now, I mean, like I said, we were talking about earlier, I mean, he only plays like 9 snaps, and it seems like 3 of them he's close to making big plays. I mean, he's had an interception. Hicks is going to be a heck of a player. And Jared Wiley, that one hurts. I mean, that's just bad luck, losing Wiley. The frustrating thing is that from the timing standpoint, is that now you're probably essentially losing kind of 2 years of development for Wiley. I mean, I'll expect that he'll be back next season, but it might not be until the season starts. And, it's a ACL, so you're always never your best the first year back. So that's tough. But last year, I mean, jury's still out on Felix. Rashid, hey, bad luck there, but I think you're going to get something out of him, on the back end still. Wanye, I mean, it's entirely possible that you're still looking at a possibility that in 2026 that Kingsley Suamataia and Wanye Morris are your starting tackles. Shamari Connor is going to be a great player. BJ Thompson, I mean, gosh, talk about, bad luck once again. And I've been seeing BJ in the locker, just for those who have been asking. BJ has been around the locker room a lot more lately. I'm still not sure that there's any expectation for him to return this season, but he's looking great, in good shape, it looks like, and definitely been being able to stay around the teammates. That's great for him. Good to see. Nick Jones still could end up being a nice piece for you. So, I mean, Rashid was a huge part of making the 23 draft look really, really good. And, I mean, I guess I get your, 2 in a row. It's 2 in a row of bad luck. I don't think it's 2 in a row of, poor moves. I think it's just bad luck with some specific situations and specific players. So, Jesus, thank you for the super chat. That is incredibly kind of you. I greatly appreciate that. And Jesus you already had a couple of questions. You got another one. I'll come back to it. But, and like everybody's, as always, if you want to move to the top of the line, because I'm getting too slow with my questions and my answers, super chats always move to the top. So appreciate you, Jesus. You are great contributor. Love to have you around. Great to see you every week. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. Um, Kathy asking about, I think you're talking about Eric Scott, the cornerback picked up from Dallas. He's on the practice squad right now. So certainly a possibility that he could be into the mix. And like I said, I think that Chiefs might even get another corner for the practice squad. We'll see if anything develops down that road. But they've got, like I said, they've got some depth, but it's just a matter of they'd like to have more top level depth. And that's what they're really lacking in. Injuries have hurt. I mean, Jalen Watson's, they were hoping to have Jalen Watson as being a part of this, and that injury really hurts him. So, and there just wasn't any top round starting type talent that, didn't have some real serious red flags that hit the market. And I get that, because if you got somebody who can cover and is affordable and doesn't have any injuries, why would you let him go? I mean, I get that. So that's really what made it difficult for the Chiefs. Gabo, someone who catches your attention for the waiver wires of all of today's releases. Good question, because I was glancing at that, and there was quite a few. You're right. I mean, there was a lot of players who hit the waiver wire today, and Chiefs were one of them. Cole Christensen. Chiefs terminate his contract as a vested veteran. I have not heard the scoop on that one and the rationale reasoning behind it. Could be the indication of a move down the road. And that there's another transaction that the Chiefs are going to make. I mean, that gives them a free spot on the 53 that they can pick somebody else up. So it could be that they've got their eye on someone else. I do know, Cole is a company guy. So he's been in a situation before. He gets it. The Chiefs have gone to him before and said, hey, they would like to pick somebody up, and hey, can we release you for a couple of days and bring you back on the practice squad? And Cole gets it. I also know that, Cole has been considering, remember, he went to Army. He's a West Point graduate, and when his NFL career ends, he does have his military commitment, and he has been considering starting that. Not saying that's the cause, his decision here with terminating his contract. I was expecting him to absolutely finish out the season this year, so we'll see what happens. But that's, I know, been in the back of the mind for Cole the last year or so. So it's a possibility, but I don't want to speculate any more than that. Just, it's one of the options that's out there. Getting back to the players who hit the waiver wire. I mean, I know there's players who've been connected to the Chiefs before in the past because they're, from their draft experience, the Chiefs were interested, or they were mocked or speculated. I mean, I'm always going to be interested in Albert O, who the Philadelphia let go today, the Mizzou connection. And let's face it, Chiefs are hurting for tight ends right now. But Albert O's bounced around for a little bit. I don't know if that would work, but that's just more of a personal connection there. Just having a Mizzou guy in the locker room, would love to see that. Like Mike Edwards had an injury settlement with Buffalo. Don't know how long he's going to be out. I can't remember what that injury was, but obviously that's the name the Chiefs have been connected with. So if and when he ever gets healthy, I suppose. But I mean, if that's season ending, I don't remember. That's a possibility. Andrew Booth, the Dallas let go today, was someone that the Chiefs had consideration in the past, as far as when he was coming out. There was a lot of speculation about him to Kansas City. I'm not sure how serious that was, if the Chiefs were super serious into him, but that's an interesting name that's out there. I see like Rod Williams tight end, just because of the Chiefs' situation there. I can see that being somewhat of interest. Not sure there's anybody else that really jumps out at me. Eric Tomlinson, another tight end. I guess that, that could be a possibility. Not a huge amount. And this is, once again, kind of a interesting time, because once again, I was mentioning the fact that, now at this point, all players can go through waivers. So sometimes there's a little bit of rush as far as teams, they're making some moves with veterans and letting them go, so that, and sometimes at this point, it's teams even just doing a favor for some players. And if they're out of it and they're like, okay, we're past the trade deadline now, this player didn't get traded, we're not really interested in them having them be a part of the rest of the season, but hey, we'll let you go and go see if you can go find somewhere else. And if you're a losing team, you may be letting somebody go to find out what the winner. Good news for everybody who is tired of hearing my voice. Our dear friend Nick Jacobs is in the green room, so I will wait until he's all set to go. Oh, he's giving me the thumbs up, so he's set to go.
Hello, Matt.
Welcome to the show, my friend.
We meet again.
We do meet again, and it was only about, let's see, 17 hours and 20 minutes. Because I remember talking about us recording the podcast at 2:26 a.m.
Yeah.
So
that did happen. Yeah.
And then if all of you want to know why that the podcast was up late today, that's because somebody fell asleep while uploading it. I'm not naming any names. It was me, but that's why it was late.
But you just named a name.
I know. I have to take the hit on that one. So, yes, I think I got a text from Nick at like 5:30 in the morning that said, "I guess you fell asleep."
It happens, man. It happens.
Yes, I did. Hey, I hope you don't mind if I put you on the spot here, Nick. But since you're joining the party and everything, just curious, what did you think of the trade deadline today?
There's more trades than they normally have in a given year. There was a lot of trades over the past 2 weeks, so I mean, it's helped that they brought it back to this point. And if I were in their shoes, I would honestly push it back a couple more weeks, just so that teams are definitively out of it, and that because you want this type of action, you want a trade deadline like this, to where the Carolina Panthers know 100% that it's over for them, and then they can trade away some of their guys, and then teams like the Chiefs or the Bills or whoever who are really trying to get in contention, they have that opportunity. So I would push it back even further, right before. I'd push it back another 2 weeks at minimum if I were in the NFL shoes, just to continue to keep that interest. And I certainly wouldn't want to compete with election day, election night.
every 2 or 4 years, you might hit that. And with the season getting longer, I mean, absolutely, it totally makes sense to me to continue pushing it back. Mm-hmm. And to your point, I mean, if I'm the Miami Dolphins, I would have hit the button and been sellers. I think they're fairly naive if they think that they're still in it, but you're right. I mean, giving them 2 more weeks, if they'd lost 2 more games, they might have decided to go ahead and be sellers. I mean, you and I thought the Saints should have been sellers, probably a month ago, but they didn't decide to be sellers until about the last 48 hours.
Yeah, well, part of that's because Mickey Loomis is still the general manager there, and he's been there so long that he's not a part of that new era and that new wave. So that's partly with Loomis. That's a big problem that honestly the Saints need to move on from. But there's not going to be a GM that's going to. There's not quality GM candidates want to come in there and deal with almost. I think after Lattimore trade today, it might be $80 million in dead cap money next year. Oh
yeah, no, I mean they can't keep kicking the can down the curb.
Well, that's what Loomis has always done, and they're at the point where, like, they can't even get rid of guys. Like, they're just gonna have to. Whoever comes in is stuck with Derrick Carr at $50 million for next year, unless they work something out with him to get him to take some new deal that they can push money down the road. But that's a lot of money. $80 million to try to move around that you're over the cap. That's a lot of money to have to try to move around. So good luck to the Saints on that. The Dolphins, I don't think they're ever going to give in and say that they're out of it, because they had the owner spend way too much money this offseason. And you can't admit defeat to him if he's going to invest that in Tyreek and Tua and Waddle and giving Mike McDaniel a new contract.
Yeah, I mean,
it could be 1 in 10, and they'll still be like, "Yeah, we got a chance."
It's entirely possible and very likely, but man, they are 2-6. You are not in it. I mean, that's just the crazy thing. But
spent more than $100 million, man. Owner wants to make his money back.
People can convince themselves of anything, and I mean, it's not necessarily even the team. I mean, it's the fact that you built your team around Tua and you lose Tua, and that's what happens.
Yep.
I mean, sometimes sometimes a season's a lost season. You just have to realize that it is a lost season, and it's time to take advantage of that and do what you have to do to make sure that next year's not a lost season. Because right now, I mean, that's how the Saints of the future will happen, because you don't realize that it's a lost season. You don't acknowledge it, and then you just continue to make mistakes that pile up on mistakes. We had a couple of questions I was saving specifically for you, Nick. So Des had one that I answered, but I wanted to ask you too. Any players today that you were surprised weren't traded?
No. And the reason I say that is because, like, I mean, you never know what teams. Like, I mean, teams, they're the guys who really wanted to move on from, they did a last week or the week before. So that already got handled. So those were kind of the big ticket items in terms of trade and everything. And Darius Smith had been talked about for a while, and Mike Williams had been linked to the Steelers for 3 or 4 weeks. And I kept saying on Twitter, when people would ask me, like, what do you think happened with Mike Williams? He's going to Steelers. Like, that's where he's going. So, no, I'm not surprised in any way by anything that happened today. I was hoping to be surprised. I was hoping to see a blockbuster. I was hoping to see DK Metcalf get traded. But that's a dream. It's not a reality.
I guess the biggest maybe surprise of the day was just how much the Washington Commanders gave up for Marshon Lattimore.
Yeah, no, that was stupid on their part, but they did it, so good luck to them. Like, you giving up a 3rd and 4th for a guy that has hamstring injuries and other injuries on a regular basis that involve needing speed and ability to change direction and cut. Like, you don't give up that much, but they did because they're not used to what winning feels like. So they're like Ricky Bobby and Talladega Nights. They don't know what to do with their hands, and so they traded away multiple draft picks.
This might be too early for you because I know with the Monday night game you may not have had a chance to watch everything, but Chiefs Kingdom was asking because you mentioned on 41 is the mic, Joshua Uche looking good last night. Have you had a chance to go back in and take a deeper dive into his 9 snaps and have any additional thoughts today so far?
Not play by play, but you weren't going to see a lot out of him with how wet that field was. Like until he's on a dry track, you're not going to see that speed at full strength. So you see the closing speed whenever he chased down, I think Mayfield one time, and then another time when he chased down that screen and stopped it from being a first down conversion. So I mean, you saw the athletic ability, but in terms of pass rushing ability, he's just trying to get comfortable right now in his new setting, and the field yesterday was not going to be ideal for him as a speed rusher.
Yeah, I thought the biggest takeaway that you could say about Uche specifically was that I thought that the 3rd down rush package looked a lot more effective than it has been. And I mean, I think having him and Karlaftis opposite each other and Jones and Wharton in the middle, that looked like a pretty good group. And you think about having Dana in there in the future and in the middle too, along with Jones. I mean, that could be a really powerful front four in third down situations.
Yep, as long as they don't run into each other.
Yeah, that was scary. Hoping that Karlaftis' hip is not going to be a problem. He obviously went back into the game last night, but short turnaround, one day fewer of rest, that could be at least something to monitor going into the Denver game. That was very scary. I was very glad to see him and Wharton both get back up after that play.
Yep.
John's question: will the Chiefs left tackle position players continue to improve?
You hope so. Otherwise, you're asking the question, why are you paying the offensive line coaches what you are? That's the whole purpose of why they're there. That's why they get paid, so they better improve. And if they don't, then you got some questions you got to ask in the offseason.
I mean, I heard Wanya's name a lot less last night.
Yeah. Oh, here's a friendly reminder. They're not going up against Max Crosby.
There was that. Yes.
There's not if he was going up against Vita Vea, things would have went sideways real quick.
Yeah.
So it was all about the matchup. He got an easy matchup versus some of the premium matchups that he could get. And as long as he's not going up against a premium matchup, he's fine. But if he goes up against the Max Crosby of the world, a Myles Garrett that he will down the road, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack that he will down the road. Things will get real then.
Hey, a lot of, good tackles look very average against those guys. So your mileage may vary.
You know what, Matt?
A lot of average tackles
aren't in charge of protecting Patrick Mahomes, the most important player in the NFL right now. They're not in charge of that. So
Hey, at this point, Patrick's hurting himself just by himself. So
it was a fluke play, and he decelerated very quickly, and on a wet field, it didn't work out well.
Chiefs Kingdom also had a second question. Any word on Hollywood Brown's return? I mean, the Chiefs are still targeting into the season. So, ideally they'd like to get him back, hopefully before the playoffs, maybe a game or two, but they're targeting that. So we'll see what happens, but that is their optimism. Brian, how come Uche didn't pressure nothing? Where's that 24% win rate? Well, and I think Justin piped in with 17.5%. It was a sloppy field. I mean, you're not seeing you didn't see Money's best last night, and certainly not from a speed rusher.
Yeah, like Chris Jones normally would dominate on a he would have dominated to a level that the Bucs offense would have been irrelevant there in the second half if the field wasn't wet. I don't think people fully understand how much a wet field can slow you down when you play a certain style and certain brand.
I agree. I'm trying to get in the lightning mode round faster, Nick, than I usually do. So
lightning round.
Some questions might be pretty quick answers. Chiefs Kingdom, is the Mike Dana injury worse than the Chiefs are leading on, or just being extra cautious? I get no indication it's being anything but extra cautious. He's been practicing. It's natural, I think, to be worried anytime you hear pectoral, but this is not anything that's required surgery, anything of that nature. So at this point, all you can really do with those injuries is let him rest, and Chiefs are letting him do that. And they have, like I said earlier, Nick, before you got here, the Chiefs are managing this team and this roster for the first round of the playoffs. They're not worrying about they're not trying to win the regular season.
Not trying to be the best at exercising, Matt.
And that was exactly the line that I stole. They're not trying to win the regular season. They're trying to three-peat. So if that means keeping somebody out, letting them rest up, they're going to do it.
And here's the thing I'm going to say. If they're not on IR, they have hope that they'll be back within 4 weeks.
That exactly.
That's the key point every time. If they get put on IR, it's 4 weeks or more. If they keep them on the active roster, they don't think it's going to be very long.
Yeah, and that's another key reason why I don't think that it's going to be very long for Dana. I think they will probably have him back here pretty soon, and it could be. He's kind of been on a week-to-week basis, so maybe it's this week against Denver.
Don't even do it. Buffalo, man. Bring everybody back for Buffalo.
Bring everybody back for Buffalo.
Everybody back for Buffalo.
Luttrell, are the Chiefs going to be losing the fourth quarter on Sunday?
If Bo Nix plays like Bo Nix is capable of playing,
I should say losing in the fourth quarter. I was kind of lost because I left out a keyword there.
Like I said, if Bo Nix plays the way that he's capable of playing, then the Chiefs shouldn't be losing in the fourth quarter.
Chiefs are a fourth quarter team, though. They just doesn't matter what scores in the fourth quarter. This team puts things away.
The Ravens had their way with the Broncos despite having the 32nd passing offense. Bo Nix can run, but he's wildly inaccurate in his throws. The guy may be open, he will throw it 5 yards over his head, 5 yards wide, short, you name it. His mechanics are sloppy and all over the place, and the Ravens took full advantage of it without a really good pass rush and with statistically the worst passing defense in the NFL.
It makes me wonder, because we know Patrick, we know he can draw inspiration from anywhere and motivation. I think Patrick might be a little bit actually motivated this week, knowing that Sean Payton compared him to Bo Nix, and he might just want to show Sean Payton who the real Patrick Mahomes is.
I mean, if a reporter asked him this week in the press conference, it wouldn't hurt. But I don't think it's his driving factor or motivation. I think he's got certain goals and checkpoints he's wanting to hit with this offense and get them to a certain level before Buffalo and before the end of the season.
There you go. This is kind of touched on this earlier because I did see that Mike Edwards was injury settlement with the Bills today. Are you aware what the injury was with Mike Edwards? Because
no,
I could not recall. So let's look it up and see. I mean, they did try to trade him before the trade deadline, so obviously not.
Nobody's trading for him.
Not a significant injury. So that would be, I mean, only played in 3 games this year. Request to be traded traded a few weeks ago for his lack of playing time. So it doesn't sound like this injury is serious. So obviously it was just something that he was dinged up with that required the Bills to, if they were going to move on, had to at least pay him a little bit to go away. But I mean, I don't know if that's where the Chiefs are and what they need as a cornerback. They don't necessarily need a ton of defenses, just safety help. But hey, if you want to sign Mike Edwards to the practice squad as just some additional veteran depth, I wouldn't be opposed to that.
The thing I'll say about Edwards is he had a lot of coverage issues last year when he was left on his own to cover half the field, and teams were able to target him for a handful of touchdowns last year. So there's a reason the Chiefs were like, yeah, if you can go test free agency, that's cool.
That's cool. Luttrell, silly question, but is D-Hop back next year?
I think that'll be up to if he still wants to play and what his number is. If it's something that's under $6 million a year, maybe. But if he's wanting like a $10 to $15 million contract, I don't anticipate that being something that happens.
Yeah, I mean, based on what we've seen in the last 2 games, it would not be surprised if, there's some teams that would be absolutely willing to pay him a lot of money in the offseason if he could rejuvenate his salary demands here, Nick. But yeah, I mean, to me, yeah, it's going to depend on how well he plays, how healthy he is, how little money he wants, and how much he wants maybe at least 1 or 2 rings.
How much did he enjoy the season playing with the Chiefs? Did he get a ring? Would he potentially want another ring if they do? And does he like playing with Mahomes? Would he want to play with Mahomes and Andy Reid again? Those are the things he will have to decide after the season. So we will see in January and February where that goes.
There you go. Brian expands on this. The most productive offensive pieces are basically on 1-year contracts. How many going to be here next year? D-Hop's one. I mean, Hollywood's another one. Juju's another one. I mean, those are way too early for no other reason. They're both hurt right now. But Kareem, another one. I mean, Brian made this point earlier. I mean, the Chiefs do have a fair amount of mercenaries on this team that are just, guys who have been signed up for the 1-year deal. How many of them do you think could be back?
Well, here's the reason they're mercenaries, because they're wanting to chase a ring. And they know that this offense gives them the best opportunity for that. And to play with Patrick Mahomes gives them that opportunity. So, again, for each one of them, it's a question of, do they want to continually play winning football at the end of their careers, or do they want to go get paid again? And that's this Juju Smith-Schuster found out what it's like to get paid. And he found out how miserable it is. And he made money that hopefully will last him quite some time. And the first thing he did was come back to Kansas City. So DeAndre Hopkins has made money, made a lot of money in the league, played in a lot of relevant football games. So now you can tell he's amped up that he's getting to play in relevant football games. So that'll be up to him if he wants to come back here. And Kareem will come back here if they let him. I don't think Kareem cares about money. I think Kareem wants to right a wrong for what happened in 2018, and he wants to win a championship with the Chiefs. He wants to play with Kelsey. He wants to play with Mahomes, and he wants to kind of, no matter when it closes, I think he wants to close out that chapter with redemption.
Yeah, and I mean, it was a long time ago, so I can't really, I don't think it's fair for me to compare, Kareem and his experience last time versus his experience here. I was still a little green on the beat as well, so my experience probably a little altered as well. But I'll say this: Kareem, by all appearances, both just by observation and by what he has said, is having the absolute time of his life in the last month. I mean, so yeah, I could absolutely see Kareem wanting to stay here for a while, and I mean, for no other reason than I think he feels like he's missing 3 rings and wouldn't mind probably getting those rings. Mm-hmm. So. Des, great member here. Super chat question for you. And Nick, you are the perfect person to ask this because I know you're one of the best, most knowledgeable people that I know about offensive linemen, and you talk to a lot of people about exactly these things. Wanye, what does he need to improve?
He had a habit coming into camp, and last year he would lunge. He would mistime some stuff, and he would lunge to try to get a powerful punch. And you only do that whenever you're not up to par in the overall punch on an even base. So at times he would try to punch, and he would lean forward and rock forward, and then he's either falling to the ground or he's off balance and the edge rusher is getting by him to his outside. He also at times could be weak on an inside rush when he takes too wide of a set, and then the defender, the DN set him up that way so that he could shoot his inside shoulder, and sometimes one is not able to always stop that. He's good. He's an athletic player. It's just for offensive linemen, the biggest things are how powerful is your punch? How comfortable are you in your punch? How quickly can you punch? How quick are your feet? If you have those things, you can always find a roster spot in the NFL. And if you're athletic enough that you can pull and get out into space, so opposite of Orlando Brown, then you always have a chance. Let's take Orlando Brown, for example. Pad level was high on a regular basis. He was sloppy in his bend. He would just stretch his arms out like Frankenstein and just hope you ran by it. And he knew his arm length was long enough and he was wide enough that Mahomes would probably get the ball out. But once that guy beat him around the corner, Orlando couldn't recover. Couldn't be able to kind of figure out a way to kick step, get over there quick enough, and wall him off. Like Orlando, to me, always looked like he had cement shoes on. And he was somehow trying to kick step in mud. And it was never working for him, and the field was perfectly fine. But it was very lumbering for him. So Wanye, I want to say this, Wanye isn't that bad athletically. Like he's much more of an upgrade in that part. It's just I want to see a drive and passion in him, that he's obsessed with getting better, and that's going to take a whole nother offseason before he can get to that point. But the thing I've talked about time and time again is so many offensive linemen come in with bad habits because they play pass protection. The O-line coach just needs them to get out there, and athletically they can win because they're not playing elite rushers every single week like we talk about on here. So guys develop bad habits. They have bad muscle memory. Then when they get to the NFL, they can't win with that stuff anymore because they're not athletic enough. Eric Fisher somehow could because he was that freakishly athletic, and people didn't realize that. There'd be times where Eric would have his hands in his holster, and so that's down by your hips. Whenever an offensive lineman, you need to keep it up here, but guys keep it down more because they want to keep balance because they feel like they're going to stumble or fall. So there's just those little things all combined, those little nuances. Those are all the things that add up to it. But as Andy Heck said when I asked him about what bad habits college players come into with, he said it takes 6 or 7 years before he felt that, and he understands they don't have that time, but he never really had a solution in the answer he gave. So we'll see.
Absolutely fair enough.
You were there. Am I wrong?
I completely back it up. You are absolutely correct and accurate in your description of that conversation.
And I specifically asked him a question that wouldn't throw anybody under the bus. It's not necessarily about this current Chiefs roster, but the Chiefs have like 5 rookies on this roster that he has to develop. and they have to develop for down the road here for nights like last night in 2 to 3 years from now. And he's the one in charge of doing that. He's the one they've entrusted to do that. And that's the number one thing he's got to get done. And if you look at the left tackle position, Wanye is still not where you need him to be. Kingsley isn't starting right now. And so then that begs the question after this year, depending where each person's at, what about those other 3 or 4 guys that are young players too?
This isn't going to be my. I have my question. I'll have to raise my hand. I'm gonna have to super chat myself $5 here.
Sorry, yeah, you got to pay for it.
I mean, we know there's still the contract situation with the cap hit number for Joe Tooney for next year.
Yep.
We know that Trey Smith is not signed.
Yep.
What if I suggested and told you that starting on either side of Creed Humphrey next year was Hunter Norzad and Wanye Morris?
I think it's a possibility they're gonna attempt. Now the problem I have concern wise is how stout can Wanye be in his anchor if he's going up against somebody like Vita Vea, or if he's going up against Christian Wilkins that he's going to twice a year with the Raiders. That's where he's going to need a strong anchor, and he's going to need serious upper body and lower body strength to be able to be in an anchor that holds that wall and doesn't become a turnstile on the interior, to where it's no longer the left tackle you're having an issue with, it's now at the left guard. And you can't have those hiccups at left guard, center, right guard for Mahomes, because that's when Mahomes has to bail quicker than he would want to.
Yeah, I'll be intrigued. I mean, I think that it's, especially since the Chiefs have had a little bit of experimentation with Wanye at guard. I'll be interested to see if it's something that they do consider in the offseason, just depending on who does come back and who doesn't. I mean, if they're able to sign Trey, I think that obviously changes the equation considerably.
And they should sign Trey. So, as I said on the podcast last night, pay this man his money.
We might have to get some T-shirts for that one. I mean,
that's John. That's what's his name?
It's from Rounders. Yes, John Malkovich from Rounders.
Yeah,
I know. I mean,
we can't, Matt. That belongs to that film company. Let's
well,
not bring lawsuits on ourselves.
I'll come up with something more creative. Infopocalypse. With Joshua Williams, how is it a player seems to know the system and where to be less in his third year than in his rookie year?
I don't have a good answer for you on that. I just know although I can't respect no other Dave Merritt that said it last Thursday when they said sometimes players watch what the guy in front of them does instead of listening to what the coaches say. So I kind of wondered on that one to where that may apply right there.
Gosh, Dave Merritt is just an absolute font of information.
Because he didn't name names, but he said sometimes players like to watch the guys in front of them.
Yeah.
Instead of listening to what the coaches are teaching them and telling them. He
never
never used any names, but
nope.
With how undisciplined Joshua Williams is, it wouldn't stun me.
I mean, it is, and I don't have a good answer for it either, because, and I think that maybe the answer is that he's not less understanding of the system and what he's doing now than he was, as much as that maybe he's stood still and hasn't necessarily gotten better while other players around him have improved. Jalen Watson has improved. Najee Johnson has improved. So maybe he's just been treading water. And the funny thing is, Nick, is that Josh Williams was the guy who was, the expectation was that he was coming in that maybe was the least developed, but had the highest ceiling, but maybe the lowest floor. Played really well as a rookie, and now he's been bypassed and getting bypassed. Although now, I mean, he's going to play. I don't know if, other than Najee, I don't know who is going to move ahead of him. I mean, and that's one of the reasons why obviously the Chiefs were looking for somebody to come in and play corner to help them out, but still don't have a solution there.
Not yet. We'll see. We'll see how things unfold in the weeks ahead.
And there you go. Well, I know. Hey, it is election night, so that's probably why we don't have as many questions as we usually do. So I'll just go ahead and do last call.
Nope.
If there's anything, Kathy was asking about Irv Smith. I think you're talking about the tight end, Kathy, right? I would assume.
Yeah, I thought he signed somewhere.
That's what I was going to check real quick and see where he is.
Houston Texans.
There you go. He is a Houston Texan. So, once again, know your Chiefs.
So no, he's not available.
There you go. So
you got Choro. Choro's got a question for you.
He's on the practice squad though, so if you want to sign him to the 53, you can.
There's a guy I want to sign from the practice squad to the 53 for the Chiefs. His name is Tyreek McAllister from the Raiders. He just got signed to their practice squad. He had a strong preseason, really good returner. They tried him at wide receiver. He's tiny as a running back, but he's got some. He could fill some McCall Hardman role, I think, if they wanted him to.
There you go.
Put him on the roster.
Put him on the roster. Choro, how did Hendershot do? Any expectations to carry more than 3 tight ends now that Fortson is gone? Have we seen the last of Jody?
I mean, I'm going to be mean here because you're forcing me to be mean by bringing him up. Jody gets hurt every year. He's going to be here for a couple of games, and he's going to get hurt and go on IR, and then that's kind of that. Just his body just hasn't been able to withstand playing in the NFL at the position he does and the transition he had to make from wide receiver to tight end. So, unfortunately, I mean, I keep saying this, and they keep bringing him back each year, and then he keeps going to IR after a handful of games. So, they may continue this tango for a while longer because, man, there's nothing the Chiefs love more than reunions. Just reunion after reunion.
Hey, there's a few reunions that they have passed on. So,
it doesn't feel like many these days.
I mean, and Hendershot didn't play a lot, but I thought he played pretty well. I mean, obviously had a catch. Good for him. I mean, he hasn't been here that long, but he's obviously picking some things up. I mean, I don't know that he's going to be able to give you a lot more than that at this point. I mean, if you're the Chiefs, you're not going to be going all of a sudden. I mean, it was notable to me that the last night, the few times that they went, to 13 personnel and played 3 tight ends, because it wasn't as many times as it had been the last couple of weeks. And and like Kathy said, I mean, unless you go out and you find somebody, Anthony Ferkser was one of those guys because he'd been with the Chiefs before. Yes, it was a long time ago, but at least has some knowledge of the offense. I mean, unfortunate thing, I mean, the Chiefs have Baylor Cupp that they signed to the practice squad. He's hurt right now, unfortunately. He's on the practice squad injured reserve. Could have been an opportunity for him because we both liked him in off-season program and training camp. But yeah, I mean, it feels like Chiefs may just have to roll with what they got for now. And I'm with you. I mean, Jody. Problem is, Jody was old coming out, and now I think he's going to be 29 next year. I think
he might be turning 30 next year.
He might be 30. I mean,
29.
I had it pulled up a second ago. What is he? He's 28 now, so he'll be 29 next year.
Yeah.
No, I take it back. He turns 29 in December, so he'll be 30 next year. You're right.
Yep.
December birthday, December 7th, day that will live in infamy. So
Matt, you're getting flooded with questions right now.
Hey, last call, we'll do it. So, but I think unfortunately, just because of his age and injury history and come back from an ACL, like I mentioned earlier, you're never 100% year one. So that I think is just Nick is flashing his light at me to move on. All right, then you get a tough one. Gabo, is it a viable option to move Chamari Connor to the outside?
I don't think they're interested in doing that right now. I think they like his role where he can be a guy who helps them run support and plays downhill. I don't think they want him as a coverage corner yet. Maybe in a year or two, but not right now.
I would agree with that. I mean,
you thought that was going to be hard for me.
I thought it might be. I thought it might trip you up a little bit. Maybe you'd be tempted, but I would agree with you. I think you're right. I mean, they like him too much in the role that he's in, and yeah, mid-season especially, that's hard to ask somebody to pick up a new role, and that is a entirely different role than slot. So, Brian, if the Chiefs come back from Buffalo 10-0, how many national pundits need to shut up and take a week off?
Dude, national media is always going to find something to say negatively about the Chiefs because they need to get every other fan base involved in viewing their stuff. So any show is going to be 50-50. Nick Wright's always going to be 4. His panel's going to be 50-50 because they have to be. On ESPN's Get Up, it's going to be 50-50 on there. So there's going to be 2 people that aren't going to be impressed enough. And then on Good Morning Football, that's going to be 50-50 as well because that's just what they have to do. They have to be able to appeal to all the fans who hate the Chiefs, and they have to appeal to all the Chiefs fans. But the way the magic spot they found is if you say hateful things about the Chiefs, Chiefs fans are going to come no matter what. So you can't say loving things about them on a regular basis, but you have to balance it in both fronts because then the fans who hate the Chiefs get irritated too, and they keep coming back because, well, they said that this was this. They said that Mahomes is the MVP, Josh Allen's the MVP, and then you get their rage up too. So it's just a tightrope act that every national member seems to follow, and they don't just want to give honest opinions. Some of them just don't want to give honest, true opinions. So they want to cater what gets them paid.
There's no doubt that right now, I mean, the Chiefs are making the transition. I mean, they're making the transition to villain that, either you love or hate.
They're not making it. They were already there last year.
I think it's more pronounced now. I don't think it's as bad. I mean, it's not as bad, and maybe it will be. I don't know. I feel like at some point, I feel like that the likability of Mahomes and some of these guys will deflect a little bit of the Patriot hatred that developed.
It's not.
But I could be wrong. But I will say this: you're right from a good content standpoint and TV standpoint. Though, if the Chiefs are 10-0 coming back from Buffalo, that's when, if you're the national pundits who like to scream and shriek and make noise and everything, that's when you start building up the Chiefs and talking about going undefeated. Because there is nothing like building somebody up just so that then you can tear them down and say, I told you so. So they will start hyping up the Chiefs as being, hey, go undefeated, 20-0, they could 72 Dolphins, here come the Chiefs, just so that when the Chiefs lose, they can then celebrate and party and proclaim themselves a genius. See, told you they'd lose.
Hater.
Susanna, how much more difficult are divisional games? Do people underestimate divisional opponents?
No, it's just they always have familiarity with each other. So Denver's got a good defense. They just didn't showcase it in Baltimore, and they were close there in the first half. But then Bo Nix decided being accurate was not something he was passionate about for the rest of the day. And he sprayed that football over the yard, and then the Ravens took advantage of it, and then that ended that. So Chargers, I mean, they're still building who they are. Raiders are awful. So the Chiefs. I mean, I think the Broncos will give them a game. I think the Chargers will give them a game, but the Chiefs just stay their course and stay healthy. I don't see any of the divisional opponents staying in their way.
I do think that the Chiefs underestimated the Broncos last year. I mean, obviously the Chiefs were playing terrible at the time, so I think that Mahomes had the flu. And Mahomes had the flu, so there's a factor. Although I mean, come on. I mean, Michael Jordan had the flu.
Allegedly.
Come on. He might have had worse than the flu. Who knows?
Pretty sure they hinted at things in the documentary.
Bad seafood. There you go. Yeah,
that's what we'll call it.
But I don't know. I mean, the Chiefs make divisional games look easy because they have owned the AFC West since Andy Reid got here. I mean, especially since Patrick Mahomes took over. So, I mean, I think the Chiefs make it look easy, but I think divisional games are hard. And I think that, you can sometimes overlook a divisional opponent when you have had the success like the Chiefs have had against the Broncos. Broncos are a different team this year. And I think the Chiefs get that. So I'm not expecting the Broncos to sneak up on them this weekend, but You know what, Nick? Your mileage may vary.
It might, Matt. It might.
Dez, do you think the moves that the Steelers made makes them more of an AFC threat? I mean, I think the Steelers are already a threat without the moves that they made.
So here's two problems the Steelers have going against them.
Lay it on us.
Quarterback play, and they have a bad offensive line. One of the worst offensive lines the Steelers have had there in quite some time. So they have a good defense. Got a good defense that keeps them in every game. TJ Watt's arguably, him and Chris Jones are battling for Defensive Player of the Year. Adding Preston Smith to the thing helps as another pass rusher. But Mike Williams can't fix how bad Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are. And they also can't fix the Steelers' offensive line. So those are things that I think will bite the Steelers when it matters.
I mean, I don't have as much dislike of Russell Wilson as everybody else does. I still think that he can be an effective quarterback, and he's, I think, a lot better than Justin Fields. So that's the scary thing. I think he can be a game manager. I think he can, I mean, he's a different quarterback than he was once upon a time. I think he can be a effective quarterback for that team that plays just a bunch of defense, as long as he doesn't make a bunch of mistakes. I may be overrating him. I mean, I have been a bit of a Russell Wilson defender over the last couple of years. That felt like that problems he had in Denver weren't really him as much as it was Denver, and I think that was borne out when they decided that we were going to play a game of Russell Wilson not be there anymore, Nick, as you would say. They got a lot of problems there, but the Packers also picked up Preston Smith. That should bolster the defense a little bit more. I mean, I think Preston Smith should be a good fit for that defense. I just don't know what he's got left. We'll find out.
That we will.
Choro wants to know if we have any prediction for the next two games. Will the Chiefs lose one of these next two games, Nick? And if so, which one?
I'm not helping your gambling, Choro.
I don't say this could be gambling, but we're not going to get into spreads or anything like that.
Not doing it.
Not falling for the banana in the tailpipe.
Not doing it.
I mean, what was your preseason prediction?
I think I had him 14 and 3.
I just couldn't remember what you had at these two games. I feel like you might. I'm trying to remember now. Maybe you may have had them winning at Buffalo. I can't remember now.
No, probably not. I didn't.
I assumed preseason the Chiefs were going to lose at Buffalo, so I'm going to stick with it. I mean, unless things dramatically change this weekend, I'm sure that my prediction next week will be that the Chiefs lose at Buffalo, because that seems to be the history of these two teams, is that Buffalo has the upper hand in the regular season and the Chiefs have the upper hand in the playoffs, and I think there's a reason for that.
Let me find. I'm having a. Oh, broke down the schedule. May 5th. Since we're using the article, had them beating the Ravens, had them beating the Bengals, had them beating the Falcons, had them beating the Chargers, had them beating the Saints. I did have them losing to the 49ers if they were healthy. Had them beating the Raiders, had them beating the Bucs, had them beating the Broncos. I had them losing to the Bills. What I wrote back in May, the Bills will be counting down the days for this game, the scene of their last playoff defeat. Buffalo always performed strong against the Chiefs in the regular season. Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo are okay with not revealing all their moves before the playoffs. Then I had them beating the Panthers, the Raiders again, the Chargers again, the Browns, the Texans. I had them losing to the Steelers on a short week on Christmas. Then beating the Broncos again to go 14 and 3.
Yeah, because you had them fall into Buffalo as well.
Yeah, Buffalo, 49ers, and Steelers, and that's back in May before I even got to see a single practice.
And I did not do the same type of breakdown that you did, but I will say that I figured that there were two games that the Chiefs were absolutely going to lose on this schedule. I figured they'd probably lose more than two, but I figured they would lose at Buffalo and at Pittsburgh because, that road game on Christmas Day, short rest, there's nothing good about that. Luttrell, who's going to say hateful things about the Chiefs here, Nick or Matt? Answer, Luttrell, both. That's a rare both of us, Nick.
Yeah.
Although I think I was harder on them than you. So, Choro, what's the status of Hardman? He looked okay after he came back. Was it more of a stinger? I mean, that's what I'm assuming. We haven't gotten a real specific description of it. We'll see if Andy is a little bit more detailed on Wednesday, but that's what I would assume, especially the way he was hanging his right arm. But that was, I'll be honest. I mean, I did not, when McColl, as long as he was down the way he was and then going straight back to the locker room for x-rays, I did not think McColl Hardman was coming back in that game.
But he did, Matt. He did.
Yes, he did.
And he won our hearts over on Monday night with his next 2 returns and a couple of wide receiver screen passes.
Choro, the tight end set with Kelsey and Gray set in the backfield. Have we seen that before? I mean, we've seen it a little bit the last couple of weeks, Nick, but do you remember the origin of that?
Yeah, they've run it before, and it's pretty popular at the college level, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that feels like something that Joe Blameyer came into Andy Reid and said, "Hey, we should use this."
Mm-hmm. It's a good way to use the 3 tight end sets and get quick completions, but also get versatile in their run game and be able to use them out in space on pulls and motions.
So here's a funny story because we had a Chiefs assistants on, help me keep track here, Friday, Nick. Because it was a Thursday, but it was a Friday, so we had the Chiefs assistants, and we had Joe Blameyer. There was we had a running joke throughout kind of the availability about when Joe Blameyer was going to be able to come in, because Joe, during the lunch break, when we have our availabilities, always goes on a run. He goes on and he runs up by the stadium and everything. So we just made a joke of like, well, Joe's gonna have to run faster today if he's gonna be here for his availability and everything. And he made a point when he went to go start his run, he ran by the media workroom on the sidewalk outside and ran just about as fast as he could. Which cracked me up, but ran into him afterwards because I can't remember what he was. I guess it was the next day I ran into him when he was coming up to the end of his run, and was talking to him, and I was telling him about how we were joking about it and everything, and then I said, yeah, and I don't think I didn't see that split T formation that you guys were running against the Raiders while trying to run the clock out, and didn't think that I had your fingerprints all over it. And he just laughed. So that confirmed to me everything I needed to know, that yes, that was Joe Blameyer. I was like, we should run the split T when we're trying to, run timeout and run the ball down somebody's throat.
Yep.
Who was the Bucs defensive line? What was the Bucs defensive line that good against the pass? Why was the line having issues protecting? Was there some element to hold out Hunt's use until the second half? That's a lot of questions, but basically a lot about the Bucs defensive line, Nick.
How many questions are we giving Choro at this point? Like it's just turned into it's turned into the Choro show.
Well, it's his last one because it's last call. So
no, it was last call about 10 minutes ago.
and he has to take the kids to basketball practice. So this is his last one.
I want to believe Choro, but I can't. Vita Vea.
Yeah.
Causes a lot of problems. And you have to account for him at all times. You have to try to double team him if you can. And the Bucs were trying to take advantage of that, brought some blitzes from time to time, but then also were relentless in their pass rush whenever they dropped into some zones. And that's why Vita Vea had the night that he did. And a couple other guys were able to eat based off how Vita Vea did. But it all comes down to Vita!
That's pretty much it. And man, was there a better flipping of the switch than in the second half? Because Chiefs' offensive line took over in the second half.
As they should.
That was impressive.
Ground and pound, run it down their throat. You want a power run game? Do it. Do some pulls? Good. But if you want to play that finesse game, Vita Vea is going to tear you apart. How
do you minimize him? You run right at him.
Yeah, you don't run stretch because he can disrupt that.
There you go.
And then it starts causing problems. You start having wrinkles in your sheets.
Kevin wants to know, will Kelsey sniff 1,000 yards this season based on his current upward trajectory?
I have no idea. I don't even know where he's at right now. Did they win the game? That's all I care about.
Oh, come on, Nick. We're bottom line business here. Travis is now, because I know his numbers have been sneaking up on me. His numbers are much higher than I think they are. He has 435 yards. I mean, I'm not going to rule it out. I mean, they've got 9 more games to play, so simply doubling that would get him to 870. I mean, he has been trending upward, so I would feel good about that. I mean, if he stays healthy, I'm going to say yes, he does. But you shouldn't bet on that because, you know, we are here, Nick. This is for entertainment purposes only.
Yep.
This is not a competition. This is an exhibition only. Please, I beseech you, no wagering.
And that vote hasn't passed yet.
So. I was just doing my best Letterman impersonation. No. So, okay, 2 quick questions here. Lettrell asked if I was still hitting the gym. I've been to the gym twice in the last week, so I got that going for me, which is nice. Brian, brisket or ribs, Nick?
No.
The answer's both. Although.
Not today.
Not today.
Tomorrow doesn't look too good either.
All right, last question. Des, how will it work for the Christmas game since the week before they play Sunday? They actually play Saturday before the Christmas game. Will they practice that week at all since the game is on Wednesday? So let me think about it, Nick, here. Let's work backwards. So you're playing on a Wednesday, which means no practice on Tuesday, which means you would practice on a Monday.
Like a Thursday game. But it's worse.
But worse, yeah. Because I mean, yeah, you're only going to have the one practice, right? You're going to practice on Monday.
You're probably going to have to do something. You have to do a walkthrough on Sunday.
You'll do a walkthrough of some sort on Sunday, but nothing, no high intensity practice or anything.
And another thing they may have to do is they may have to do part of the Steelers game plan with the Texans game plan that week.
You probably will, yes.
So,
because that week will also be terrible because you play Sunday, Saturday, so no practice on Friday. You'll practice Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday. Yeah. So you'll basically have 4 practices between week 15 and week 17. Not ideal, but I still contend, and I mean, it's going to get tricky if the Chiefs get the 1 seed. But I said when the schedule came out, I mean, if the Chiefs don't get the 1 seed, that mini bye week between the Christmas Day game and Broncos and the season finale could end up being a huge advantage. Now, it could be a huge disadvantage if you get the 1 seed because you're going to have like 25 days potentially between that Steelers game and a divisional playoff game that if you wanted to rest your starters against the Broncos because you've got either a playoff spot clinched or you got the number 1 seed clinched. I mean, there's a lot of different scenarios. And I'm not going to worry about it too much, Nick, because it's not here yet, so it hasn't happened. So let's not worry about it. But there's a lot of different outcomes that could be interesting. So, all right, Nick, is there any last minute wisdom that you want to share with us for this week?
Nope, Matt, that's all the time I got for today.
All the time you got for today. Well, thank you for joining us, my friend. I truly appreciate it. Everybody, thanks for spending a little bit of your time Election Day here with us. I'll now let you go find out what Steve Kornacki and John King have to say on the Magic boards and check how things are going in Cobb counties and Washoe County or wherever it may be. So, hey, everybody, have a great week. Back to a kind of normal schedule. Chiefs on a Sunday noon game. So Nick and I will join you with 41 is the mic at a fairly reasonable hour that I will not fall asleep while posting the the podcast. So everybody have a great week. We will see you after the game for 41 is the mic. And then, of course, next Tuesday back here for the Chiefs Digest live Q&A. Everybody have a